Hi, I'm Kelly Cervantes, and this is Seizing Life, a bi-weekly podcast produced by Cure Epilepsy. With students preparing to head back to college campuses, this week on Seizing Life, we take a look at the challenges and successes of students with epilepsy by revisiting several former guests who shared their college experiences and insights with us. In 2019, DePaul University student Eva Wadzinski and her mother Michelle spoke with us about the physical, mental, and emotional stresses of college and offered their advice on resources and potential accommodations for college students with epilepsy.
When she finished high school, there was a big discussion at her epileptologist's office convincing her that she needed to take a year off to get seizure control before starting university. And Eva was really reluctant. She was, I think so many things had been pushed back, so many things had been taken away, that now the thought of spending a year dealing with, seizure control.
Yeah. So did you take that year? Did you push forward?
I did not.
She went part-time.
Yeah, I went part-time because I get bored very easily. And so I was like, I could not fathom being out of school for a year.
And I just have to imagine that college application process was significantly different for you than for your peers. What was that like?
The application was very easy. We just had to talk about an essay about hardships, and I was like, I have a lot of those.
Check.
And so I got in, and then I started 4 classes, and my grades kind of just fell down because of how many seizures I was having. I was also weaning off a medication and putting a new medication on.
And this was not at DePaul. You started at
Harold Washington City College, and I started in a community college because I didn't think I was at the health to go to a 4-year university. And I also went through 2 brain surgeries in the process. Yeah, and so, and then I started DePaul. I started with 4 classes. It was not working out well, so I went down to 3, and it's been better.
So at some point, you decided that you could make that change from the city college to a 4-year university. What inspired that change?
I always have the notion and the mentality to, like, if you want this hard enough, you'll be able to get it regardless of your disease. And so you kind of just have to push forward every day, and you end up having to educate your professors, your classmates, your student of accommodations, because no one seems to know what epilepsy is.
Which is so, like, leads perfectly into my next question is, what do you tell your professors and how do they respond?
It differs.
We have a letter that we've been giving to every teacher since, I don't know, freshman year. And we've modified it through, but the same letter, go in, make the modifications, print it out, give it to them, trust that they'll actually read it, and then.
Yeah, and then I'll have one professor is like, well, you were gone I was gone because of seizures, but they think I just skipped class. And so then I have to go to my doctor, to my psychologist, to my student of accommodations to get everyone in to say, like, no, this is not because I skipped classes, because it's unsafe for me to be in class. And so that's tough when that happens.
Yeah, well, and it's creating more stress for you in an already stressful environment. I mean, college is hard, right? And so that additional work has to be tough. What do you tell your peers, your fellow students?
I don't usually tell them because it's more of a personal thing, and especially if I'm not close to them or they're friends of mine, then it's like I'm just gonna But I've had seizures during classes, and then it makes the professor more aware because I don't have tonic-clonics unless I'm off of my medications. I have, all these other ones that may not be apparent, but I had a seizure in my math class where my arm convulsed and it actually hit one of the girls, and she was like, "Are you okay?" Like, they thought I was probably on some drug.
Which is just so frustrating, but that's where the thought process goes because people are so uneducated about seizures.
Yeah.
And, you talk about student accommodations. What are some of the accommodations that you have requested from your schools?
I have a longer time for tests. They give me extended time. I have one that if I have doctor appointments or medical appointments, that I will get passed for it. Sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't.
That's not an official accommodation. That's something that's not available through the accommodations department, and we fought for it to increase the awareness that if she's having a day where she's having 10, 15, 20 seizures in an hour, she needs to come home, take rescue medication, and that puts her out. Mm-hmm. She can't be in class. And then some of the epileptologist appointments where if you miss it, you have to keep it because you might not get in for a little while and you just need to be there. So that we fought for that accommodation. Yeah. But the extended time for tests
it's very helpful because I might have seizures during classes and it takes me 10 to 15 minutes to be aware. And so it's very helpful in those situations. I'll have classes where I have seizures and then I can't really get back to the lecture right away. And so then you lose that 15 minutes of class. And so what are you going to do? Like asking them to repeat all this stuff?
Right.
Yeah. And then I have short-term memory loss sometimes. And sometimes I don't retain everything. So I always have like loads of notes written out so I can remember it.
Yeah. Are there specific things that you would recommend to schools, different ways that they can better accommodate students with epilepsy?
One thing that I try to give people more information that are around my age or going to high school or going to college, that they don't give you a menu of how many student accommodations you can get. So you have no idea of what's out there for you, and you have no idea if it's actually going to apply to your disease, whatever it is. And so I think that's not okay, because what if this one's going to very much help you, but they're not going to say oh, you can have this or you cannot have this.
Right, to even know what the possibilities are, what you can even ask for.
Yeah.
Well, and it's a law that students are protected through primary and secondary school. That law does not extend to college students. That is at the decision of the university and the instructors. The law does not protect you at university level. Does not protect students with disabilities.
I had no idea.
Yeah, I know. It was shocking to me too when she started down this road at university, and I all of a sudden learned that the same protections
Aside from,
aren't
I'm
there.
sure, like the ADA protects,
but as far as
not
educational things,
Wow.
And so it's an individual experience at each individual learning institution.
Huh. So going on this journey, through high school, going to college, now being in college, what tips, what recommendations, what advice do you have for teenagers who are walking the same path as you?
I would connect with people who are already in school who have epilepsy, because they're able to give you a lot more tips and you have an advocate for you. And then also just research a lot about your university, because some have good student accommodations, some have horrible ones. And so you really have to look further than a person that doesn't have a disability. And so
it needs to be part of your college selection, not just who has the prettiest campus and the best food, but you're really looking at, that's a major decision factor.
And then a lot of times if you have epilepsy or any other disease, your doctors are in one place. And so for me, I had to find a university in Chicago or in Illinois, because I didn't want to change and restate my story every single time.
Understand that.
Yeah.
So, you can still get out there, you can still get that college degree, but you also have to respect your limitations.
Yeah.
Always go back to your student accommodations and update them of what's going on, and because then they can change things for you, because it's an ever-changing disease. And so I think just being resilient about going to these people, going to your professors, because then they'll start understanding a bit more.
So it all boils back to communication.
And then also I think people need to be aware that you're not going to get judged if you have to take limited classes each quarter semester, and it's more normal to be in school for 5 years. Like no one's going to go at university, yeah, and people aren't going to judge you for it.
Hi, this is Brandon from Cure Epilepsy. Did you know that 1 in 26 Americans will develop epilepsy in their lifetime? For more than 20 years, Cure Epilepsy has funded cutting-edge, patient-focused research. Learn more about our mission to end epilepsy at cureepilepsy.org. Now back to Seizing Life.
We spoke with Caroline Pratt and her mother, Ashleigh Henrichs, about the changes that occur in the parent-child relationship as a child with epilepsy moves away from home to attend college.
You've gone through high school, you've had this positive environment. Your seizures are still not under control, but it's time to start thinking about college. What is going through your mind when it's time to send in those college applications?
Well, for starters, I did not want to go to a college so close to home. I didn't want to go too far away, but I wanted to go I don't know, maybe a couple of hours away. Then I started having more big seizures and closer together, and of course I don't have a trigger, so that wasn't really great. And on top of that, I got a scholarship to Carthage, and Mom was basically like, if you get a scholarship, you're going. I'm sorry, you're going.
I think a lot of parents sort of feel that way. So that's a pretty normal parent response.
They were able to give me the accommodations that I needed.
And what were some of those accommodations that you requested?
Well, for one, I get to live in a dormitory that is typically only for seniors or people who request accommodations, just because it's really great. It's you don't share a bedroom with 6 people.
Mm-hmm. Which is important because you need your sleep. Lack of sleep and stress can be a huge seizure trigger, so making sure that you can get a good night's sleep, which can be very challenging to do in college, if I remember correctly. So that's incredibly important.
She also has academic accommodations, and they were very, just like her high school, they were very, open to that, and she has extra time on testing, and it was interesting. We had 2 very different experiences on college interviews, and Carthage, as I said, was very open to whatever she needed to be successful. And another college, said, I don't think we've ever had anyone, with a seizure disorder on campus. And I was thinking, it's 1 in 26, so
you have.
Again, she's been very fortunate to have the support system that she has. And, as her health is still kind of a question mark, we really are thankful that her dad and I are both nearby, and that we can get to her if needed, but that she can live on campus also.
Yeah, and experience that level of independence and responsibility. And so what is going through your mind as mom? I can't even imagine the sort of anxiety that you have around letting her go and explore this independent world. And what are you thinking? What have you learned, or what advice do you have to get parents through this?
Well, there's a picture that Caroline loves to kind of make fun of, because we took a lot of pictures on move-in day, and there was one where I'm hugging her and I'm just a wreck. I'm just a wreck. And
absolutely.
People who didn't know us that well thought, she's going to college in your town that you live in, so okay, I know you're a little nervous, but I think, my advice, again, the communication has to be there with wherever, your child is going, as far as every housing, academics, counseling, has to, everybody has to be on the same page. But, Caroline has not been healthy since she, started at Carthage, and even move-in day, we got a call right after we left, but she's making her way, and she wants to make her way, and we have one of the things we started was an app, medication app, so that we get notified. Her dad and I do if she's not taking her meds, and so that's, pieces like that. But, we can't, hold her close, that wouldn't be good for her, wouldn't be good for us. She does need to, have that level of independence. We prefer that she have a cleaner room, but that's on her. But this is, and the other part that was a little different is that she skipped a grade, so she's only 17 at college. But again, she's making her way, and it's important to her that she does that with limited interference from mom and dad. So,
Caroline, what advice would you give to other teens and kids getting ready to go off to college in what they should be looking for, both in a school, but also navigating that parent relationship?
Well, I would say just be sure to stay close with your family. I found that's what helps me. They're always there to support me. And honestly, the best advice would just be to be yourself. Like, epilepsy is what you have, it's not who you are, and just be you. And most of the time, people won't even really notice you have it.
Right. Absolutely. Ashleigh, what advice would you give to parents as they are navigating this newfound freedom of, for their children? How do you best navigate this next stage of your life and parenting?
I think one of the things that I was very happy and impressed with was that each of her professors, emailed her and said, we're aware that you have accommodations. We need you to schedule time with each of us to discuss, exactly what we can do to help you. And so that was big for me as a parent, because I'm out of that. I'm not involved with that, and that's Caroline's responsibility now, and which was important. So that that role changed with that email, and I've never been a helicopter parent. It's certainly epilepsy changes things, but my children need to solve problems on their own, and of course, as things progress, if nothing was happening, then mom would get involved. But it's sort of college is, again, there's a lot more responsibility on the student, and there really needs to be. So, just again, communication is key. I had to be comfortable with what I was hearing and seeing, before we, committed to Carthage. And I think that's true whether, your child's going to a large school or a small school. They have to, want to be there, and you have to be comfortable with that investment, with the resources available, and then you have to trust. You have to place a lot of trust in, the faculty and the staff and your child. Certainly, I don't remove myself from the equation entirely, but it's a different stage in her life, absolutely, and in my life, and it's hard. It's hard. It's wonderful, and it's hard.
Do you get notified with every seizure?
No, Caroline typically will let me know with the larger ones. She had one in class yesterday, and that's just a struggle. It's one thing if you're in your dorm room and it happens privately, but it's hard to be in a new environment, have a fresh start, which is what we told her college was, and then to still you have to deal with it.
You're still taking your baggage along with you, unfortunately.
Yeah.
In one of our first remote episodes during the COVID-19 pandemic, University of Cincinnati PhD candidate Christin Godale spoke with us about how growing up with epilepsy influenced her decision to pursue a career in epilepsy research, and why she became more public about her diagnosis during her college years.
It was hard growing up with epilepsy, it really was. And it wasn't until I was in college, I started to be more frank with people, and I talked about it. I talked about epilepsy, like, look, I have epilepsy, this is a seizure. And that was the first time that I remember being an official advocate for the disease and telling people about it. And I think that's, what we're here to do. But
what made you change your mind to start telling people that you had epilepsy versus keeping it a secret?
Oh, wow. There are a couple things, but I remember when I was in high school, I had really bad status epilepticus event. I was hospitalized. It was bad, but my neurologist actually encouraged me to start to learn about the disease. They gave me books. I'm in like the hospital with all these electrodes on my head and like having seizures, but I'm reading about epilepsy. And my doctor then invited me to an advocacy event they were having at the hospital. And, I was just volunteering, and I came into contact with this young boy, and he obviously had epilepsy. He was like 9 or something. And he looked at me and he's like, "You have epilepsy?" And I responded, "Yeah." And then he began to ask me all of these hard questions, like, can you get married? Can you have a job? Can you go to school? Can you have friends? Can you do all of this stuff? And at the time, I wasn't sure, but of course I said yes. And after that event in my life, I began to reevaluate how I viewed the disease, and that really started my advocacy journey. And in college, that's what made me so open about it. And, as a blossoming neuroscientist who wanted to study the disease, it wouldn't look too great if I started to hide it from the very beginning of my academic journey.
Was there a difference in the way that people responded when you told them up front in college about the epilepsy versus how they responded in middle school and high school?
Of course, yeah. I think it also has to do with the level of maturity of my peers from one time to another. But yeah, everyone was very accepting of it. If I had a seizure, they were fine. They followed my seizure action plan, and they called my mom, or they called the ambulance when needed, and no one was really afraid to work with me or be my friend. And I was very thankful for that. Well, versus in high school where I didn't tell anyone, and when I had a seizure, it was a totally different reaction because they didn't know, and it was like surprise.
We've spoken with several college students who have epilepsy and going through that experience. What was college like for you? Did you ask for accommodations? What was your college experience like?
I didn't ask for accommodations in college. I actually didn't receive accommodations in grad school until I had a status epilepticus event in 2017. And the reason being is because I think I was too proud. And I didn't want people to think, oh, you have epilepsy and that's why you need this extra time. And I didn't want anyone to think that, because I still, to this day, I believe I can do everything and anything as well as someone who doesn't have epilepsy. But, that really hurt me at the end because I had some problems with accommodations for some classes. And since I didn't have all the paperwork filled out, I had a hard time. So, looking back, I would definitely tell any college students who go to your accommodations office immediately and just fill the paperwork out. Don't be like me, don't wait, and don't let your pride get in the way. It just doesn't matter in the end. What matters is, you doing well in school, getting your grades, and then going off to wherever you need to go.
Thank you to all of our guests who shared their insights and experiences navigating college with epilepsy. The college years are a time of significant transition for any family, but for those who are impacted by epilepsy, it's also fraught with new emotional and physical challenges. If you are one of those students or families impacted by epilepsy, we hope this episode has provided some helpful information and insights to consider as the new school year begins. Epilepsy patients and their families are at the heart of the patient-focused research that Cure Epilepsy has promoted and funded for 23 years. Our goal is to advance new therapies to promote seizure reduction and freedom for patients and their families. If you would like to support Cure Epilepsy's research, please visit cureepilepsy.org/donate. Your support and generosity are greatly appreciated. Thank you.
The opinions expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the views of Cure Epilepsy. The information contained herein is provided for general information only and does not offer medical advice or recommendations. Individuals should not rely on this information as a substitute for consultations with qualified healthcare professionals who are familiar with individual medical conditions and needs. Cure Epilepsy strongly recommends that care and treatment decisions related to epilepsy and any other medical conditions be made in consultation with the patient's physician or other qualified healthcare professionals who are familiar with the individual's specific health situation.